Hello, friends and family. Today's verse is "My country is suffer from a food shortage." Let's begin. In a quiet corner of the bustling marketplace, an elderly woman named Alara meticulously arranged her basket of freshly picked berries. Her eyes, though clouded by time, gleamed with a sharpness that belied her age. Her gnarled hands moved with the grace of a seasoned artist, placing each berry in a perfect row, ensuring their vibrant colors didn't clash. The rich scent of berries filled the air around her, a stark contrast to the stale odor that lingered over the rest of the market. Alara had noticed the subtle signs of the impending crisis before anyone else. The slight increase in grain prices, the occasional shortage of staple goods, the whispers of poor harvests. Her gut instinct had prompted her to prepare. For months, she had stored away food from her garden and the surrounding woods, filling her cellar with jars of preserves, dried meats, and grains. Now, as the reality of the food shortage began to dawn on the villagers, she felt a weight of responsibility. Her preparations had not been driven by fear, but by a deep-seated wisdom that had been passed down through generations. The market grew tense as the news spread. Faces once filled with hope and excitement now contorted with anxiety. The laughter of children playing nearby was muffled by the hushed tones of worried adults. The mayor had called for a meeting to address the issue, but Alara knew that words alone wouldn't fill empty stomachs. She had to share her supplies, but she was also aware that doing so could spark desperation and chaos. Carefully considering her words, she approached the gathering crowd. "Friends," she began, her voice firm yet gentle, "I have noticed the changes in our marketplace, and I suspect you all have too. It is with a heavy heart that I must admit our village faces a food shortage." The murmurs grew louder, but she held up a hand, silencing them. "But fear not, for I have prepared for such a day. I have stored enough food to last me for 6 months, but I will not hoard it while others suffer." Her revelation was met with a mix of awe and suspicion. Some stared at her in disbelief, others in anger, thinking she was mocking their plight. But Alara's expression remained steadfast. "I will share my food with you," she continued, "but only if we come together to find a solution. We must form a council to manage the distribution fairly, and we must also begin planning for the future. We need to plant more, hunt more, and share our knowledge to ensure this never happens again." The crowd grew still, contemplating her proposal. It was unheard of for someone to have such foresight in a time of plenty, but here they were, on the brink of scarcity, and she was their lifeline. Slowly, people began to nod in agreement. A young man, braver than the rest, stepped forward. "Alara, I'll help you," he said. "My family has always been close to the land. We know how to plant and grow food in the most challenging conditions." A sense of unity began to stir among the villagers. They realized that only by pooling their resources and knowledge could they hope to survive. The council was formed swiftly, comprised of the most trusted and capable individuals from various walks of life. They met in the town hall, an old stone building with a heavy wooden door that had seen better days, but it was the heart of the community. Alara led the first meeting, her voice strong and commanding despite her age. "We must divide the food I have stored among us," she said, "but only as a temporary measure. We cannot rely solely on my preparations. Each of us must do our part." She handed out paper and ink, asking everyone to write down their skills and what they could contribute to the collective effort. Farmers, hunters, and those with knowledge of food preservation were essential, but so were the blacksmiths who could fashion new tools and the seamstresses who could stitch warm clothes for the coming winter. The council worked tirelessly, planning and organizing. They divided the villagers into teams, each responsible for a different aspect of their survival: planting, hunting, foraging, and conservation. Ilara knew that the coming months would be difficult, but she had faith in the resilience of her people. As the first weeks of rationing began, the villagers pulled together, sharing their knowledge and resources. The blacksmith, Thomas, worked day and night with his apprentices to create new tools for the farmers. The seamstresses transformed old clothes into patchwork quilts to keep warmth in and hunger out. Children who had once played in the fields now helped their parents, eager to contribute to the common cause. Ilara's food stores were distributed among the villagers, ensuring that everyone had a fair share. The council met daily to adjust the rations as needed and to address any disputes that arose. The community grew closer, their bonds forged in the fire of necessity. They worked the fields from dawn till dusk, planting crops that could yield a harvest before the harsh winter set in. The hunters returned with more than just meat. They brought back knowledge of the forest's hidden bounties, sharing it with those who had never ventured beyond the village's borders. Ilara noticed a shift in the villagers' attitudes towards her. Initially met with suspicion, she was now revered as a beacon of hope and wisdom. Her modest cottage became a hub of activity, with people seeking her guidance on everything from the best way to preserve vegetables to the most effective farming techniques. She took this newfound respect in stride, knowing that their survival depended on everyone's willingness to learn from each other. One evening, as the setting sun painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, Ilara sat by her fireplace, contemplating the future. Her eyes drifted to the shelf above the mantel, where a dusty, leather-bound book caught her eye. It was her grandmother's journal, filled with ancient recipes and farming secrets that had been passed down through the generations. A sudden realization struck her. There were likely many more such books hidden away in the village, forgotten treasures that could help them through this crisis. The next day, Ilara called for a town meeting, her voice echoing through the streets like a clarion call. She spoke with passion, urging everyone to search their homes for any books, scrolls, or parchments that could hold the key to their survival. The villagers responded with renewed vigor, rummaging through attics and cellars, bringing forth a trove of knowledge long buried by time. The town hall was soon transformed into a makeshift library, with tables groaning under the weight of the collected wisdom. The council members and villagers pored over the texts by candlelight, sharing what they discovered. Old farming techniques, long forgotten in favor of easier but less sustainable methods, were resurrected. There were recipes for nutritious stews that could stretch a handful of ingredients into a hearty meal, and instructions for building greenhouses to extend the growing season. The air was electric with the excitement of possibility. Ilara's eyes fell on a worn page that spoke of an ancient planting ceremony, designed to honor the earth and ensure a bountiful harvest. It was a ritual that had not been performed for decades, lost to the march of time and the pursuit of modern convenience. She shared her findings with the council, suggesting that they revive the tradition to boost morale and perhaps invoke a bit of luck for their struggling crops. The council agreed, and soon the villagers gathered in the town square, carrying torches to chase away the shadows of the looming shortage. The air was thick with anticipation as the elderly woman described the ceremony's significance. They formed a circle around the newly plowed field, their faces a mix of hope and skepticism. Ilara took a deep breath and began to chant, her voice carrying over the rustling leaves and the distant calls of night creatures. The words were foreign to some, but the sentiment was universal, a plea for sustenance and survival. As the ceremony progressed, a gentle rain began to fall, dampening the earth and the heads of those present. It was a sign, a whisper from the heavens, hinting that perhaps their ancestors were listening. The villagers took it as a positive omen and worked through the night, planting the seeds that held their future. The following days saw an outpouring of communal effort as the villagers tended to the crops, sharing what they had learned from the dusty tomes. The weeks grew into months, and the harvest grew closer. Yet, the food remained scarce. The villagers tightened their belts and shared their meager meals. Ilara's wisdom had bought them time, but it was the collective effort that had kept them afloat. The council's daily meetings grew intense, discussions often spilling into the night as they debated and strategized. They had to ensure that the upcoming harvest was not only bountiful, but also sustainable. One crisp morning, as the first light of dawn pierced through the fog, a young girl named Lila burst into the town hall, panting heavily. "Ilara," she gasped, "you must come. The crops, they're growing." Ilara, who had been up late into the night, discussing crop rotation with the council, looked up from her maps and charts. She followed the girl out into the damp fields, the dew-laden grass cool against her bare feet. The sight that awaited her was nothing short of miraculous. The previously barren earth was now a canvas of green, with sprouts pushing through the soil, reaching for the sky. The villagers had worked tirelessly, and it seemed their efforts were being rewarded. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of the villagers. The planting ceremony had worked its magic, or so they dared to believe. The sight of the sprouting crops invigorated them, and the atmosphere in the village shifted from one of desperation to one of determination. The council immediately called for an assembly to share the good news and to remind everyone that their collective work had brought about this change. "Look at what we have achieved together," Ilara announced, her voice carrying over the bustling crowd. "We must not let up now. These crops need our care and attention more than ever if we are to survive the winter." Her words were met with cheers and nods of understanding. The villagers had tasted the bitterness of scarcity, and they were not eager for a repeat. With renewed vigor, the villagers worked the land. Each day brought new growth, and with it, a sense of relief and pride. The children grew adept at recognizing the first signs of a thriving plant, and their laughter echoed through the fields as they raced to show their parents the progress. The hunters and foragers brought back their findings, sharing them with the community pot, ensuring that no one went without. Ilara's cottage became the heart of the village once more. Here, the council met frequently to discuss the crop's progress and plan for the future. The villagers looked to her for guidance, and she provided it with a firm yet kind hand. Her wisdom was no longer questioned, it was revered. One evening, as the last of the day's light faded into a starlit sky, Ilara sat outside her cottage, her hand resting on the leather-bound journal. Her eyes were closed, lost in thought. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and she looked up to see a young woman, Lisa, approaching with a worried expression. "Ilara," she began, "I fear my family won't survive the winter. We've nothing left to trade for food." Ilara's heart ached at the sight of Lisa's desperation. She knew that the burden of the shortage was weighing heavily on all of them. "Tell me," she said gently, "what do you have?" Lisa hesitated before revealing a small bag of seeds, a family heirloom. "These are rare," she whispered. "My great-grandmother brought them from the old country." Intrigued, Ilara took the seeds and examined them closely. They were unlike any she had seen before, with intricate patterns and a variety of colors. "These could be a true blessing for us," she murmured. But we must be wise. Plant these seeds in a hidden corner of the field and care for them as if they were your own children." Lisa nodded, clutching the seeds to her chest, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The council met again, and Ilara presented her plan. The villagers listened intently, the flickering candles casting shadows across their weary faces. "We will allocate a special section of the field for these rare seeds," she said. "We must protect them from the elements and from those who would seek to take them for themselves. Only together can we ensure their success." The council agreed, and a group of the strongest villagers, including Lisa's husband, set to work immediately. They built a sturdy fence around the plot, using materials from the surrounding woods. Each night, they took turns guarding the seeds, their eyes peeled for any sign of trouble. Meanwhile, the rest of the village tended to the other crops with renewed dedication, eager to see what these mysterious seeds would yield. Ilara watched over the progress of the rare seeds with a keen eye. Each day, she would visit the hidden garden, her heart swelling with hope as she saw the first shoots pushing through the earth. The plants grew quickly, their vines twisting and turning in curious patterns. They produced a fruit she had never seen before, a vibrant mix of blues and purples, the size of a small melon. The villagers spoke in hushed whispers about the miracle seeds. Their curiosity piqued. As the days grew shorter, the first frost kissed the other crops, but the enigmatic plants flourished, untouched by the harshness of the season. The council gathered, their eyes wide with amazement as Ilara presented the first fruit at a meeting. "This is not just a gift," she said, her voice filled with solemnity. "It is a responsibility. We must learn from these seeds and apply their resilience to our own lives." The villagers took her words to heart, and the fruits of the miracle seeds were distributed sparingly, used as a source of sustenance when the winter's grip grew tight. Their taste was unlike anything they had ever known, sweet and tangy with a hint of the exotic. The children dubbed them elfberries, whispering stories of how the magical creatures had blessed their village with abundance. As the harsh winter set in, the council's careful planning paid off. The village had enough food to last until the first signs of spring. The rare fruits were a welcome addition to their meals, a burst of flavor and nutrition that helped stave off the dreariness of the season. Yet, Ilara knew that one good harvest would not be enough to sustain them. The council continued to meet regularly, discussing how they could improve their agricultural techniques and better prepare for the future. They studied the old texts and experimented with different crops, eager to learn from the past and adapt to the changing world. The villagers, inspired by Ilara's leadership and the success of the miracle seeds, grew more determined to build a sustainable community. Thank you for your time. God bless.